Right. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another. Welcome to. Hold on a second. Let's see here. Let's see. All right. Can you guys see the picture here? Let's see. Okay, there it is. Now it's getting better. Okay. All right. So here we are with another episode of the Mr. Islam Answers Back show. See people are coming in. Welcome, welcome. Today we got another good topic for you. Right? Another good topic for you. And again, this is another topic that this is another good topic that it's an old one, because we always used to hear about this in the early days of online debating about Islam, right? This was one of the ones they always would like to bring up about jihad, jihad this, jihad that, or whatever, right? And so once again, recently, uh, on social media, came across this argument again. Somebody brought it up, and of course was spouting the wrong information about it, claiming that jihad is some kind of offensive war that Muslims make or are supposed to make on non-Muslims to, in particular, make them accept Islam. Okay, that was the claim that I heard, and of course I was like, wow, I haven't heard that in a long time because we have refuted that so many times. You know what I mean? This claim has been refuted so many times over the last decade, I would say, if not more, but at least online within over the last decade or 15 years, 20 years, and then to see somebody come up with that argument, in 2018, just last year, a few weeks ago, was a little, amusing. You know what I mean? It was amusing. The claim that jihad is some kind of offensive war that Muslims are supposed to make against non-Muslims to make them accept Islam. That was the claim that the person brought, and I was like, wow, I haven't heard that in a long time because it's a false claim. It's a false claim, and it's been refuted over the years. You know what I mean? It's been refuted numerous times over the years. So to hear somebody bring that up, in 2018, I was, and I hadn't heard it in so long because, like I said, it's been dealt with so long. So to hear somebody bring that up, I was like, wow, really? Some of y'all are still trying to make this claim that jihad is some kind of offensive war that Muslims are supposed to make. So of course, I had to deal with the person. So I said, let me make a video. Let's do a live stream about that and talk about that since we haven't done it in a while. And let's get a new fresh argument on the record to deal with it. All right. So, first things first, let's go ahead and take it to the Quran. All right, let's go ahead and take it to the Quran and address the matter. All right, let's go ahead and take it, you know, to the Quran and address the matter. All right, so as you see, number one, the idea that you're supposed to fight or attack people to make them accept Islam is not part of Islam. Okay, that's not a command that the Quran orders. Right? As you see on the screen, chapter 2, verse 190 is very clear. And fight in God's cause or Allah's cause against those who wage war against you, but do not commit aggression. For verily Allah does not love aggressors. So that being a clear statement, how then could the Quran order Muslims to aggress upon people to make them accept Islam? Right? That's a complete contradiction. That would be a complete contradiction. If the Quran is saying very clearly that, don't be an aggressor, but yet somehow Allah wants you to aggress upon people to force them to accept Islam, doesn't make any sense. And of course, this is a contradiction to Quran chapter 2, verse 255. Also, I forgot to put that on the note right there. But Quran chapter 2, verse 255, which states very clearly that there is no compulsion in religion, right? There is no compulsion in religion. So the Quran cannot order you, and it does not order you to fight people, to force them, or to make them accept Islam, right? That's very clear. Chapter 2, verse 255. It's not on the screen. I'm sorry, I forgot to add that, but that's the verse. Chapter 2, verse 255. Very clear verse that says that, there is no compulsion in religion. People can't be compelled to accept Islam. That's not faith. That doesn't work. That's not what Allah wants. Okay? So that deals with it right there. Now, as you can see, I listed a few verses to show that nowhere does the Quran order any jihad to as an aggression, nor to force people to accept Islam. Okay? These verses deal with the right to fight, and as you can see, they are all in the sense of a self-defense format. The first verse is clear that I gave. The next verse, chapter 22, verse 39 and 40, says permission to fight is granted to those who are attacked. Clear, common sense, right? Because they have been wronged. Allah indeed has the power to help them. They are those who have been expelled from their homes for no reason other than proclaiming our Lord is Allah. Had Allah not repelled the aggression of some people by means of others, destruction would have surely claimed monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques in which Allah's name is often mentioned. Allah will certainly help those who stand up for him. Allah is truly all-powerful, mighty. So very clear that the permission to fight is granted to those who are attacked, who are wronged. Not to force Islam, not to spread Islam. No, when we spread Islam, it is as the Quran says that we invite people to the way of Islam with good speech and wisdom, right? And dialogue or debate, but not through forcing by fighting and such. That's not what the Quran orders. Another verse, chapter 4, verse 75 says, and what reason have you that you should not fight in the way of Allah on behalf of and of the weak among the men and the women and the children, those who say, our Lord, cause us to go forth from this town, whose people are oppressors, and give us from you thee a guardian, and give us from you a helper. In this case, this is still a self-defense example because these people are being oppressed, right? They are being oppressed. And so you can fight on behalf of those who are oppressed, which is, of course, what? A just cause, correct? But it is not, notice, it's not to spread Islam. Notice even this verse does not say it is to spread Islam or to force Islam on anybody. It is to free people from oppression. That's good. That's a noble thing to do, right? That's a just cause. Even the West claims to do that. Even they claim that when they send soldiers to this country or that country, it is to free the people from their oppressive leader. Even though that may not be true, but nonetheless, that's what they claim they're doing. Because many times they turn out to be the oppressors themselves, right? So they can't argue with that. It's a just cause. And like I said, it's just simple. Just on the face of it, it's a just cause. It's a justified thing that people would more than likely agree with, of course, unless you are the oppressor. If you are the oppressor, then yes, you will have a problem with this. You're not going to like it. But most people can see that, yes, this is justified. This is a just thing, a noble thing to do. And the next verse, chapter 42, 41, and 42 says, those who defend themselves after they have been wronged cannot be held blameworthy. Blame falls only on those who wrong men and transgress on this earth without, and it goes on to say, without a, justification and such. Again, all justified and noble things that people would agree with. That yes, those are reasons that you would fight. But again, notice the verses don't say to fight to spread Islam or to make people accept Islam. That's not what the Quran orders, right? And in my discussion with this person, I even had to go over a number of verses to make the point that when it comes to the spreading of Islam, that the Prophet and the Muslims were indeed prohibited from that. Let me get you a few verses to deal with that. As I always tell people, there are over a dozen verses, right? There are over a dozen verses in the Quran that demonstrate that, compulsion, forcing people to accept Islam, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. So let's take a look. First of all, as I said, I'm sorry, I said chapter 2, verse 255. It's chapter 2, verse 256 is the verse, which reads very clearly, there is no compulsion in religion. Truly, the right way has become clearly distinct from error. Therefore, whoever disbelieves in the shaitan and believes in Allah has indeed laid hold on the firmest handle which shall not break off, and Allah is hearing, knowing. Right? So, very clear verse that there is no compulsion in religion. But again, a number of other verses back that up, right? A number of other verses back this claim up. Because that's what they like to say. They like to claim that, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or whatever. And I'm like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. So I can back it up with over a dozen verses. But I won't go over a dozen. But like I said, literally, I have over a dozen verses that I could read to make the point that over and over and over and over and over again, the Quran does not call for or permit the forcing of people to accept Islam. That is not jihad. Okay. So I'm going to point out to you some of the strongest verses that make that point. Chapter 42, verse 48 of the Quran says, "But if they turn away, we have not sent you as a guardian over them. Your job is to convey the message." That's clear. That's clear. Right? If they turn away from what? From this message. From this message that you're bringing them. From this religion. From this Islam. From this way of life. What do? Well, he tells you. You've not been sent as a guardian over them. Your job is to convey the message. That's what happens. That's what you do if they turn away. Convey the message. Convey the message. Convey the message. Right? A number of other verses. Let's read some. Let's see. A good one is chapter 10, verse 99, where here Allah says, "And if your Lord had pleased, surely all those who are on the earth would have believed, all of them. Will you then force men till they become believers? This is a rhetorical question, right? Allah is asking a rhetorical question. And notice the example that Allah gives. He gives the example that, look, him being the Almighty God, he says he could, if he wanted to, he could have made everyone believers. All of them, he says, all of them. The point is, he's God and he didn't do that. And he has the power to do that, right? He has the power to make everyone believe. And he didn't do that. So he then asks the question rhetorically, will you then force people till they become believers? And obviously the answer is no. How can you? First of all, you can't do that. If God himself, who has the power to do that, he could make everybody a believer, but he chose not to do that. How then could you, as a regular human being, prophet or otherwise, how could you think that you could go and make people believers? If God himself chose not to do that, and he has the power to do, he could just do it with his power, right? Just in the blink of an eye, everybody could be believers. But he chose not to do that. How then could you, a regular Muslim or even a prophet, force people to become believers when God himself chose not to do that? So that's clear that the Quran is against this idea of forcing people to accept Islam. So therefore, jihad is not to wage war on non-believers, non-Muslims, till they accept Islam. It's not to wage war on non-believers at all, in fact, as I already demonstrated at the beginning. Those are the verses you will see that speak about fighting throughout the Quran, from early verses to later verses and chapters. So all throughout, that message is consistent, right? All throughout the Quran, that message is consistent. It doesn't change. That these are the permissions to fight when you've been attacked or on behalf of people who are being oppressed, which is again justified, right? Because they're being oppressed, they're being wronged, they're being mistreated and abused and oppressed by corrupt, evil people. In that case, you have a right to fight on their behalf. But again, it is not to be the aggressor. It is not to start any battles or wars, and it is not to spread Islam by force. Okay. As I said, many verses, many verses. Another one, chapter 6, verse 107, says, "And if Allah had pleased, they would not have set up others with him." So once again, Allah said, look, if I pleased, I could have made it where they wouldn't set up partners to me and worship other gods, etc. And he says, "And we have not appointed you a keeper over them, and you are not placed in charge of them." Very clear. So Allah again reiterates that look, I could have done this. I could have made everybody believers. But I have not made you, the Prophet or the Muslims, keepers over these people. You're not placed in charge of them. It's not your charge to make them accept. Okay, so it's very clear. Very clear. Again, chapter 6, verse 69 says, "The God-fearing are not in any way held accountable for the wrongdoers. Their only duty is to remind them so they may fear God." That's it. Clear, 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 clear. That's it. That's your only duty, to remind. You're not held accountable for them. Your duty, what? Your only, verse is clear. Your only duty is to remind them so that they may fear God. Okay? And like I said, a number of verses. A number of verses. Again, another good one, chapter 88. Notice I can go from early verses to later verses, middle chapters, early chapters, later chapters. It's throughout. It's all throughout. The message is consistent. Chapter 88. We were just in chapter 6. Now I'm jumping all the way back to 86. Excuse me, chapter 88. Verses 21, 22. It says, "Therefore, do remind, for you are only a reminder. You are not there to control them. Clear, beautiful verse that refutes any claims, any ideas that jihad is supposed to be about fighting to make people accept Islam. It's just not true. It's just not true. Okay. And let me take a quick pause just for a moment, just to remind everyone that if you would like to support the work that we do here on the Mr. Islam Answers Back channel and the work that I do outside of YouTube, in my debates and things like that, our dawah efforts. If you'd like to support our platform, in the description of this video, there are links that you can utilize that takes you where you can afford yourself to make a donation if you so please. We have the PayPal donation link, as you see. You can make it through our website. We also have a new feature that allows people to support us on an ongoing basis, which is a website known as Patreon. And this site allows you to make a monthly pledge that can help, support us and make a donation on an ongoing basis. Therefore, it is done once you sign up. You can, apply your donation. It'll be done automatically. Therefore, you don't have to worry about, coming and signing in every month or whatever the case may be. It can be made on a regular basis. And I left it where it's up to you, whatever you want. You want to donate $1 a month? Go ahead. 5, 10, 50, 100, 500, 1,000, $20, whatever you feel you would like to donate to help the Mr. Islam Answers Back platform. You can do so. There are other means if you like. You can also purchase our book, which is available on Amazon ebooks or in paperback form. The title, He Never Was God: How Scripture Shows Jesus Was Fully a Man and Not God. In this book, we give from the Islamic perspective how Jesus is not God, using verses from the Quran, also showing evidence from the biblical perspective that would demonstrate that the Scripture shows that he's just not God. There's also our DVB, our digital video book, entitled Taqiyya, The Lie They Made Against Islam. This is also available on DVD. You can purchase that, and that would also help towards our platform and the work that we do. Okay? So, if you would be so gracious as to help our program, make a donation, you can start today. You can use those links that are available in the description of the video. Okay. Of course, those are not available. You also have what they call the super chat. That's right there on your YouTube screen, where you can make a donation right there. Again, but as I've mentioned before, it's preferable that you use the links that we've made available to you, as the super chat, YouTube takes a considerable percentage of that. So if you want your brother to get the full amount of your donation, please utilize the links that we gave in the video. Okay, so thank you. So now back to the program. Let's see. Legend Killer says, "Salam, walaikum salam, cognition gnosis." But let's see. Legend Killer says, an anti-Muslim bigot started to claim Allah is a man god and that Allah prays to make their reputation. Anthony Rogers is annoying. Man, I haven't heard from Anthony Rogers in a long time. Been a long time. Been a long time. But yeah, matter of fact, we'll take a look. We'll take a look and see what's been going on. But of course, the man God thing is a foolish claim that they've tried to make. And yeah, we've heard this also too. This supposed praying to Muhammad thing. We've heard this argument as well, and of course, it's been refuted. Right? Because of clear here in this context, it is the salah is the blessing, to the prophet. So that's very clear. Okay, and that's been demonstrated through the language, so it's really a foolish argument that these people try to make. It's very foolish. The evidence is completely against that. All right. So back to what we were talking about, which is this idea that jihad is some kind of aggression against non-Muslims. So in that regard, the next thing that they usually try to do is they like to try to say, oh well, scholars say this, scholars say that, whatever. And you know what? They may be able to, unfortunately, find some scholars who tried to make this argument. But be clear, those who say that, they're going against the Quran, right? Be clear, if they do bring you some scholars who say that, make sure that you show them what I just showed, which is what the Quran says. That reigns supreme over anything. See, a lot of these people are so foolish because they always doing this. They always using what they call the fallacy of appeal to authority, right? A lot of them use this fallacy and ignore that the evidence goes to the Quran. The Quran is what brings us the evidence, not what a scholar says. So a lot of them in their foolishness, because that's what they do a lot of times. That's why Allah says that they took their priests and their rabbis as lords other than Allah. So because they're used to doing that, they think that we do that too. And so they'll say, oh, well, this scholar said this. And I'm like, I don't care what he said. I already showed you what Allah said. And I think, brothers and sisters, you need to take that same attitude. Don't let them sway you by saying, oh, well, look, I have a scholar who says this. So you say, okay, that scholar says that, but he's wrong. Don't be afraid to say that either. You hear what I'm saying? Don't be afraid to say that person is wrong. And it doesn't matter that you're a lay person. If you have the evidence that Allah says something, it doesn't matter. Truth is truth. I don't care if it comes from a child. I don't care if it comes from an uneducated man who has no degrees at all. If he has the evidence from the word of Allah, you can't defeat him. So that's what they'll try to do to you. Oh, well, who are you? You're not a scholar. I don't care. But I have what Allah said. I have what Allah said, so it doesn't matter. See, that's how they try to get you. Well, this scholar said it. Who are you? You're not a scholar. So what if I'm not? Tell me what I'm saying is wrong. Prove to me by the facts that what I'm saying is wrong, scholar or not. Does Allah not say that you can't compel people? So if a scholar says, yes, jihad is to fight to spread Islam, but Quran says, no, it's not, then we go by what the Quran says. Don't care if I don't have a high school diploma. I don't care if I don't have a high school diploma. If I have the word of Allah in this regard, you can't defeat what I'm saying. And isn't that ironic that we follow a religion where the prophet of our religion was said to be illiterate? Not uneducated, but illiterate. Not uneducated is the difference, right? That's what the claim. That's what we say, right? We believe that he was illiterate, not uneducated, but illiterate. He didn't have any degrees. He wasn't from the elite of society, right? He didn't have no degrees. He didn't have, learned men who he hung around with or who he was a part of, right? He wasn't among the elite in society. He wasn't among the learned men who had status and who were scholars or scholarships and stuff like that. He didn't have any of that, but he had the truth and the facts, correct? So don't let them sway you with that argument that, oh, who are you? You're not a scholar. This scholar said, and you're not a scholar. I don't care. As long as I have the facts from that book called Quran, you cannot defeat me with that. Right? But nonetheless, I have scholars who support what I'm saying. And why do I quote these scholars? Because the Quran backs them up. And that's why I tell people, look, that's what I tell people. That when I suggest you take this advice, that when I'm looking to quote a scholar, I don't just accept the person or quote somebody because they have the title scholar. No, and you shouldn't do that either. When I quote a scholar, I'm looking to see, does this scholar have evidence from the word of Allah that backs up his position? Word of Allah or something that is said to be from the prophet that backs up his position. I'm not just going to take it because the guy has a high degree, a high title, a high status, and he says something, so I say, yeah, I'm taking. No, I want to see, and you need to do the same thing. Look to see the scholar that you're quoting, does he or she support their evidence with proof evidence from Allah's word or something from the prophet that, that can make the argument. If not, then you might want to think twice about quoting them. So understand, when Mr. Islam answers back, mentions a scholar, I mentioned ones who I see have the evidence from the word of Allah to back up what they're saying, and they're not just speaking from their opinion or whatever. And you need to do the same thing. And again, when they bring you somebody, because they will do that, when they try to fish out some scholar who they feel supports their position, and you can clearly see that what's being said is against the Quran, against the word of Allah, against what Prophet said, then understand. And again, remember, the ultimate is what, because they'll try to fish out, yeah, they'll try to do that too. They'll try to fish out some hadith or something, and if it contradicts what the Quran is saying, understand Quran reigns supreme over all sources in Islam. All right? So I have some scholars who support my position, and because, of course, it's backed up by the Quran. So the first one I bring is Sheikh Atiya Sakr. Right? He was the former, or he's the former head of Al-Azhar Fatwa Committee. Okay? And here's what he had to say about it. He says of jihad, what is this? He says jihad means exerting effort to achieve a desired thing or to prevent an undesired one. In other words, it is an effort that aims at bringing about benefit or preventing harm. He says jihad can be observed through any means and in any field, whether material or moral. Among the types of jihad are struggling against one's desires, against Satan, against poverty, against illiteracy and disease, and, of course, fighting all evil forces in the world. He says there are many religious texts that refer to these types of jihad. One of the forms of jihad is defending life. Notice the word, defending life, property, or honor. He goes on to say jihad is also done to avert aggression, not to start aggression, to avert it. Avert aggression on home countries and on all that is held sacred, or in order to face those who try to hinder the march of the call of truth. He says, thus, jihad is never a tool of waging war against the innocent. It is never a means of flexing the muscles or bullying the weak and oppressed. Jihad in Islam is something unique that is established to defend the divine message from being eliminated or hindered by its enemies. Clear. Another one, Sheikh Abdul Majid Sub, right? He's also a scholar from Al-Azhar, okay? Which is irrelevant. The point is that these are some scholars, right? Because I noticed they like to do that too. They like to say, oh, Al-Azhar's the scholar from, look, man, don't play these games. Really, that doesn't matter. I'm just mentioning it just so you know, but that's not the reason why I'm not mentioning Al-Azhar to give him any more, credibility. Again, like I said, I'm mentioning them because what they say is backed up by the Quran. And so that's why I'm mentioning. So not because he's from Al-Azhar, he's prominent, or none of that matters, okay? So Sheikh Abdul Majid Sub says that in the Quran, defensive jihad is under condition of repelling aggression, whereas preemptive jihad is done only when the Muslim Ummah seriously expects a treason or an attack against its territories from an enemy. So he says it can be preemptive, but it's still a preemptive defensive attack or strike, in that what? It is only when the Muslim nation seriously expects a treason or an attack. So in other words, if someone is about to attack you, you can make a preemptive strike. But again, it's still self-defense. It's just that you are a strike. They're getting ready to attack you. So instead of you waiting for them to attack, You hit them first, but they were getting ready to attack you anyway. So that's still defensive. That's still defensive. So he says that's the only case where it's preemptive, when the Ummah expects a treason or an attack against its territories. So if you see, in other words, let's say, for example, there's a Muslim nation and an enemy is lining up on the border. They haven't attacked you yet. They haven't attacked you yet, but they're getting ready to. So in other words, they're getting all their forces, and their forces are lined up at your border. Tanks, jet fighters, everything's ready, pointed at you. So you get wind of these. Oh, look, they're getting ready to attack, and then you hit them first, right? That's still justified. That's not aggression, because they're getting ready to hit you first, so you make your strike. Okay, that's again Sheikh Abdul Majid Suf. Okay, this is also reiterated by Dr. Muhammad Amir Ali. Also reiterates the same thing. Okay. Okay. So in the summary, the brother Sheikh Abdul Majid, he sums it up like this. He says, after the above explanation, this is him speaking, quote, he says, I would like to add that Islam prohibits attacking those who do not fight. As I stated above, the preemptive war is in Islam is only permitted when there is treason against Muslims from the enemy with whom they live in peace, or imminent, meaning, you know, the attack is like it's right there. They're getting ready to hit you. Is or imminent attack against the Muslim territories. In such cases, Muslims are not supposed to stand handcuffed and wait to be slaughtered by others. Okay? So he says, having said this, I would like to classify war in Islam into three main categories, like I already mentioned, and as I showed you from the Quran at the beginning of this video. He says, one, defensive war, which is resorted to when the enemies of Muslims attacks the religion, honor, property, territories of Muslims. A liberating war, I mentioned that, where the verse talked about you fight on behalf of those people who are weak, the men, the women, and the children who are being oppressed and crying out for someone to save them. So you can do it in a liberating war, which is done to liberate all those who are oppressed, such as slaves. This form of war was normal in the early days of Islam. Liberating, which again is a noble cause, it is a just cause, and that is still in a defensive mode because clearly the people are doing wrong, right? They're oppressing and doing wrong. And then third, he says preemptive war, which is launched again only when Muslims know for sure that there is treason against their peaceful treaties with the enemy, when the enemy has a serious plan to attack them. Okay? He says it is worth stressing at the end that all three kinds of war that are mentioned above are approved by international law, and they are in effect in modern laws. Okay? So when you hear these people, if you still run across somebody who in this day and time still tries to use this argument that jihad is some kind of aggression against non-Muslims to make them accept Islam, that is a lie, that is wrong, that is incorrect. That is not what jihad is, and that is not what Islam or the Quran commands Muslims to do. Okay? So we showed you from the Quran, we showed you some things from some scholars, but again, these scholars are backed up by what I already showed you from the Quran. They're not just giving their opinion, they're not making it up, they're not trying to appease the West, they're not trying to water Islam down, they're not trying to hide something from you. I already showed you at the beginning of this video that what these scholars have said is indeed backed up by the Quran. We showed you the three examples. It's backed up by the Quran, very clear. Okay, very clear. We showed you from the Quran verses that demonstrate that there is no compulsion in religion. Okay, we demonstrated that as well. Okay, in a number of verses, not just not just chapter 2, verse 256, but from a number of verses that demonstrate that the Prophet, the Muslims were ordered that to just convey the message. Your duty is not to is nothing more than to convey the message. You have not been made control over them. You're not their guardian. You're not their watcher over them. So you don't have any control over them to force them to accept Islam. A number, like I said, is over a dozen Over a dozen verses. I gave you a few of them, but there's over a dozen that I could read to show you that that message is consistent and is all throughout the Quran, from early chapters to later chapters, early verses, later verses, is consistent throughout the Quran, and that did not change. Now, before we wrap this up, two things that we need to address, because you'll probably hear this as a response from anyone you encounter, if they think they know a little something. The two things that they will try to say to you is, one, they'll try to say, those verses were abrogated. That's one of their arguments. They'll say, sorry, nice try, but those verses were abrogated. That's what they're going to try to tell you. But let me tell you right now, no, those verses were not abrogated. There is no evidence that the verses were abrogated. Okay? Now, what they'll try to say is that, now listen, again, they're going to run that game on you. They're going to run the scholar game. Well, so-and-so scholar, we don't go by that. Show me, you tell them, show me where Allah said he abrogated that. Show me where Allah said he abrogated. They can't do it. There is no verse where Allah says, I once told you that there's no compulsion in religion and fight back in self-defense. But now I tell you, attack anybody or fight first. You will not find that. There is no verses in the Quran where Allah says, I have now abrogated or done away with no compulsion in religion, and now I order you to attack people first and make them accept Islam. Doesn't exist. So don't let them get you with that one, okay? Don't let them get you with that one, okay? Again, like I said, they may try to play the scholar game with you and say, oh, well, this scholar, blah. Look, tell them, show the evidence. So where's the evidence at? So once again, I have scholars who again, I quote because what? They're backed up by evidence from the Quran. And by the way, don't let them trick you by, they're going to try to go to chapter 16. I forgot the exact verse, but they're going to try to go to chapter 16. They're going to try to go to chapter 2 and read these verses that don't speak of any particular abrogation, verses abrogated, right? They're going to read those verses that speak of how, and actually if you read those verses in context, what they speak about is how the Quran abrogates or supersedes the previous revelation that Allah revealed. They don't speak of any particular verses of the Quran being abrogated. So don't let them trick you with that. Understand? Don't let them trick you by giving those verses that do not mention of the Quran itself being abrogated. Those verses don't speak of verses of the Quran being abrogated. You hear me? I want you to be clear about this. Don't let them trick you with those verses, because if you read those verses, they do not say that any particular verse in the Quran has been abrogated. Okay? So don't let them get you with that. In order for them to prove that a verse has been abrogated, they would have to show where Allah says, I have now done away with this, and now I want you to do this. But you don't find that. So they will not be able to show that the verse of no compulsion was abrogated, that the verse of fight back against those who attack you but do not be the aggressor is abrogated. They can't show you that because they're not abrogated. There's no evidence of such. Okay? And I can go into deeper about the whole abrogation thing too. Matter of fact, maybe we'll do a video about that to show you about this whole abrogation thing, that, a lot of the claims of so-called abrogated verses, there really is no evidence for it. They have nothing from the Prophet to demonstrate that the Prophet himself, first of all, that Allah said, or that even the Prophet said that such and such verses were abrogated. No evidence for it. Okay? And that's why when you look at the actual, when you go into the study of verses abrogated, you'll see that the numbers differ. Why do they differ? Because there's nothing concrete. See, if it was concrete and clear, everybody would be consistent. Say, oh yeah, we have it. 100 verses have been abrogated, or 200 verses have been abrogated. But no, there's different numbers that scholars have claimed over the years, over the centuries, or whatever, that have been abrogated. Some say only 5. Some say 25, 100, 200, 110, 200 in this, 250. All different numbers. Why? Why so much contradiction? Because they have no evidence. There's no direct evidence that Allah said or that the Prophet ever taught that such and such verses were abrogated. Okay, I even have scholars on record who say this. So let's deal with that, because that's the first argument. Remember, that's the first argument they're going to give you. They're going to say that, yeah, all those verses sound nice, but they've been abrogated, and that's false. So let's deal with it. First person we bring up is Mustafa Zaid. Mustafa Zaid said that abrogation, in his book Abrogation in the Noble Quran, he said that he said he counted over 140 verses that are claimed to have been abrogated by the so-called verse of the sword chapter. That's what they call 9:5. By the way, from what I've learned, that this is not a that the early Muslims never called this surah or this verse of the sword. That's a name made up later. The companions, the prophet, the companions, they never called that verse of the sword. That name was made up. I repeat, that name was made up. It is not from the sunnah of the prophet. Okay. Mustafa Zaid said, and he has shown that all claims of abrogation by verse 9:5 are false. Mustafa Zaid. Okay? All false. All false. All false. You have Imam Zarkashi in his book Al-Burhan fi Ulum al-Quran. He said many commentators of the Quran were incorrect in their understanding that the verse of the sword abrogated the various verses of patience and forbearance. This is because abrogation entails a complete termination of a legal ruling never to be implemented. This is definitely not the case with these verses. Again, Imam Zarkashi reiterates the verse of the sword by no means abrogated the verses of peace. So again, I have scholars to back me up. Why do I quote them? Because the Quran backs them up. Like they say, there's no evidence. There's no evidence that these verses have been abrogated. Okay? Have not been abrogated. Another one, Imam Tabari. Imam Tabari similarly rejects the idea that the verse, chapter 8, verse 61, the verse that says, be in peace with people as long as they're at peace with you, right? He says he similarly rejects the idea that chapter 8, verse 61 is abrogated. He mentions, as for those who repeat what Qatada and others mention concerning the abrogation of this verse by the so-called verse of the sword, it is a baseless statement, unsubstantiated by the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet, or sound intellect. That is Imam Tabari. So again, Mr. Islam is not making this up on his own. I am not saying this because I'm a Western Muslim. I am not saying this because I'm trying to water down Islam to make it appeasing to the West. These are all the arguments that they claim, right? These are all the arguments that they will claim. They will say, oh, you're saying that because you're a Western Muslim. Oh, you're saying that because you're trying to water it down. You're trying to make it sound nice to Westerners. No, I'm not. I'm saying it because it is the truth, and I just quoted to you Eastern Muslims who say the same thing. I'm quoting people from the East who are saying what I'm saying, who's saying what I'm saying, the same thing, right? I'm quoting people, scholars who are from the East, and they're saying the same thing. So you can't claim this is, oh, because I'm a Western Muslim or because I'm trying to water it down. No, that's just the facts. That's just the facts of the matter. Okay, even Ibn Kathir, after mentioning the opinion that this verse, chapter 861, the verse that says, be at peace with those who are peaceful with you, is abrogated, specifically rejects that idea. He states there is no contradiction, abrogation, or specification in this verse. He rejects it. Ibn Kathir rejects this idea that this verse of peace has been abrogated. Okay. Mahmoud al-Ayyub in his book The Quran and its Interpreters on page 201 concerning chapter 2 verse 190, the verse that says fight back against those who fight against you but do not be the aggressor. Concerning this verse allegedly being abrogated, he says that he mentions Ibn Kathir. He says Ibn Kathir objects to this view. That's Ibn Kathir volume 1 page 400. According still to other commentators, the verse was not abrogated. The view of Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz ibn Abbas on this verse, chapter 2, 190, do not kill women, children, old men, or anyone who offers you peace and withdraws his swords. If you commit such acts, you have committed transgression. So, again, numerous proof that the verse has not been abrogated. Has not been abrogated. Okay, has not been abrogated. Okay, so that's just a little bit on that. Now, here's the next one. Here's the next one they're going to hit you with. You ready for this one? You ready for this one? The next one that they're going to hit you with, right? The next one they're going to hit you with is they're going to come with the hadith, the one about I have been ordered to fight. I'm sure you've all heard of that one. So that's the next argument. If you defeat their argument with these verses have not been abrogated, they're gonna say, oh, okay, all right. Well, Muhammad said he was ordered to fight people till they accept Islam. Okay, so let's deal with that one now. Let's deal with that. Number one, okay. Number one, as we've already demonstrated, that if that hadith is true or correct, it clearly goes against what the Quran says, right? The Quran makes it clear there's no compulsion in religion. At the beginning of the video, I read to you a number of verses that were speaking to the Prophet or to the Muslims and the Prophet, or the Prophet and the Muslims, that clearly said his job is only to deliver the message. He can't compel them to accept Islam. If they turn away, his job is only to deliver the message, right? I gave you a number of verses that said that. And like I said, I have over a dozen where the Prophet, the Muslims are told they can't do that. So where does this narration that he's been ordered to fight come from? Right? Allah knows best. But if it is true and correct that he supposedly was ordered to fight to make people accept Islam, well, that contradicts the Quran. So what have scholars said about this? What have scholars said about this? Okay, let's deal with that. Interestingly, there's two arguments that scholars have for this hadith. One is that they say this hadith has been abrogated by the verses of the Quran. Isn't that interesting? You hear what I said? They say that hadith, because obviously it's not in line with what the Quran says. They say that hadith was abrogated by the Quran because the Quran says no compulsion in religion, and that's what they say. So they say that perhaps whatever. They say that the Prophet may have been ordered that at some time, but then that ruling was abrogated by the verses of the Quran. It seems strange to me. Seems weird to me that Allah would first order the Prophet to fight people to accept Islam and then say, no compulsion in religion. I'm going to say that more than likely that was always Allah's rule, meaning he never ordered to fight people to accept Islam at all. Some people may get mad at me. It's okay. Some Muslims may be upset by that. Okay, but it's clear that, as I have demonstrated throughout the Quran, that message is consistent. That over and over and over and over again, like I said, over a dozen times, Allah makes that message clear to the Prophet, to the Muslims, that he has only been sent to convey the message. If they turn away, he cannot make them accept Islam. If they turn away, he's only been sent to deliver the message. If they turn away, you're not their guardian. If they turn away, I have not put you in control of them. Your job is only to deliver the message. Over and over again, your job is only to deliver the message. And it mentions specifically if they turn away. So the context is clear. If they reject this message, if they turn away from it, your job is only to deliver, only to deliver, only to deliver. You're not their guardian. You're not in control of them. I didn't appoint you over them, over and over again. So so again, like I said, some Muslims may get upset, but hear what I'm saying. Understand what I'm saying. So like I said, in order to try to reconcile this problem, some scholars say that, and really a majority of them say that this hadith was abrogated by the Quran. And I'll read you some of their statements, okay? I'll read you some of their statements. The next thing is that some say that, okay, well, that hadith was only meant for the pagan Arabs. Which again, that still seems to contradict the Quran, because the Quran didn't say that no compulsion in religion was only for other people except the pagan Arabs. It says point blank, there's no compulsion in religion. So that would seem that it would apply to everybody, whether you're a pagan Arab of the Quraysh or whoever, right? It does, because it doesn't give a condition. It doesn't say that the rule for everyone other than the Quraysh is no compulsion, but the Quraysh compel them. No, that doesn't make sense, right? So, but that's what some of the argument is. So the argument is either that this hadith was abrogated by the Quran, right? It was abrogated by the Quran, or it was only limited to the Quraysh. So let's read some of the statements. So you have Imam Abu Hanifa and his legal school limited this hadith to only the polytheists among the Arabs. Imam Malik and his legal school limited only to the Quraysh tribe among them. Okay, this can be seen Ibn Battal in Sharh al-Bukhari, right? This is where these positions are given. Imam al-Nawawi, in his commentary on the 40 hadith on page 505, he states that the majority of scholars say this refers to the Arab polytheists. Ibn Hajar states this hadith was abrogated by later rulings concerning peace agreements. So this is how they try to reconcile it. Some say, okay, well, this was only limited to the Arab polytheists. Some say it wasn't all the Arab polytheists, just the Quraysh. It was only limited to in other words, that the Prophet was allegedly only ordered to fight the Quraysh until they accept Islam. Some say he was only ordered to fight the pagan Arabs until they accept Islam. And again, only limited to them. All other people, it's no compulsion in religion. Like I said, I still disagree with that, because when I read the Quran, it does not offer any condition. It doesn't say, you only, no compulsion in religion is only for others, but make the Arabs, fight the Arabs and make them upset, right? Fight the Arabs and make them accept Islam. I don't see that. And again, all those other verses where it says, if they reject, your job is only to deliver. Again, clearly these verses are being revealed when he's dealing mostly with his people. And so those verses are clear that, if they reject, your job is only to deliver the message. So you know what I mean? So that's what I'm seeing based upon the evidence, that I don't see where the Quran gives a condition that, those verses are only for the non-Arabs. It appears that those verses apply to everybody, Arab, Quraysh, whoever. There's no compulsion. If they reject, your job is only to deliver. Okay? But again, this is what scholars have said to try to, reconcile. So again, when they bring that to you, that's what they're going to do, because I know they're going to do that. So be prepared. They're either going to say all those verses that I mentioned have been abrogated, which is wrong. They have not been abrogated. Or they're going to say, but here's the hadith. Muhammad said he had been ordered to fight people until they accept Islam. So then you let them know, number one, that's still wrong, because and give them the strongest position, which is what? That alleged hadith is abrogated by the Quran itself. The Quran says no, there is no compulsion, so that hadith is out the window. It's gone. It's no longer useful. Either way, it's no longer useful. Or that some scholars say that it was only limited to the pagan Quraysh Arabs. Okay? So that's what they're going to try to bring to you. They're going to try to use that. They're going to try to use those arguments, and that's how you deal with that. Okay? That's how you address that. As I said, the strongest argument, of course, is that the Quran shows over and over again that that's not the case. So, you know what I mean? How is it possible that that could be the ruling when so many verses exist showing that the exact opposite, which is there's no compulsion. If they reject, your job is only to deliver the message. So that's clear. Okay, that's clear. So that's how they're going to try to bring it. That's how they're going to try to bring it, and that's how you address it. That's how you deal with it. Okay. So like I said, this is a very old argument. We haven't heard it in for a long time. I haven't heard it. I don't even remember the last time I heard this argument. But nonetheless, it was brought up recently. So I figured, you know what? Let's go ahead and address it and deal with it, and let's put it on the table, and let's let's refute it one more time. One more time. Okay. Now let's go ahead and read some of the comments. Let's see, bro. Arab speaking Jews, Christians. The ayat means message, sign, miracle, amazing event. See, even Muhammad Assad's entire commentary on chapter 2, 106, he refutes it. Right. Quran chapter 2, 106, Quran supersede. Right, exactly. That's the verse I'm talking about. The one that they try to quote as if it's some kind of proof of abrogation of any particular verse, but it's not. Right? That verse doesn't speak of it doesn't show it that any particular verse has been abrogated. So when they bring that, I'm like, you're not making an argument, because that verse doesn't show that the verse that I'm mentioning has been abrogated. You see? But that's how they try to play the game. That's the game they try to play. Quran chapter 2, right. And like I said, when you read it in context, it actually shows that the Quran is superseding the previous revelations, right? That's what it showed. Let's see. Shadid, make detailed, thorough refutations on Taqiyya. Yeah, well, we already have the one about Taqiyya. I have, like I said, I have my DVB. If you want it, go purchase the DVB that I made, Taqiyya, the lie they made against Islam. I do provide a thorough refutation of Taqiyya in that video. Okay, so you want that, purchase that DVD, and it has all the information. It does provide a thorough refutation of the claim of Taqiyya. As far as abrogation, yes, like I said, we inshallah we will make a video and address that. I do have some videos where I do talk about some of those things, and I've talked about this abrogation thing in some of my debates, you know. But yeah, maybe we'll not maybe we will inshallah in the future we'll make a video where we deal with that subject head on. Allah, man, God. That's a new one. I have not seen that one at all. I haven't seen any claims of this Allah, man, God thing, so I don't know about that one. But we'll take a look at it. The Allah praise thing, Islam having original sin, Quran. Yeah, we'll talk. We'll see if we can go through all those things. Let's see. Shadi, watch Zakir Naik's entire 2-hour lecture called Quran and Modern Science. All right, we'll see. So I want to thank you, brothers and sisters, and those who may watch this video later on. Thank you for checking out the channel and supporting. Once again, before I sign off, remember, please, if you would like to make a donation to help support the work that we do, you can make a donation using the links in the description of this video. Through our website, you can do it directly through PayPal. You can become a Patreon, all right, which allows you to make a monthly pledge, and you can support us on an ongoing basis. And through that, we will make some we call exclusive content, right? We'll provide you exclusive content just for people who support us through there. Maybe we'll have some, you know, I'll make videos that detail a certain argument, you know, or I'll make it where if you have a specific question or a specific argument or something that you ran across and you want me to answer it for you or help you answer it or help you refute it or whatever, we'll do that. So those who become Patreons, I will make that special option where you will have access to me personally, where you want me to answer something or you want me to refute something, you know, you become a Patreon, and I will, you know, you can send me an email or something, and then I'll give that exclusive option to people like who are my patrons. I will, you know, give them access where they can send me a refutation, something they want me to refute, or something they want me to address, or a topic they want me to deal with. We'll do it. I think that's a good idea, inshallah. All right. You could also, again, purchase my book on Amazon or get the DVB, the digital video book entitled Taqiyya, the Lie They Made Against Islam. And for all those who are aware, we're still in the process of trying to retrieve the files so we can complete the misquoting Quran project. It's still there. It's still on the table. We just got to retrieve those files from the hard drive. So that still is in the works as well. And once that's finished, we will make that available for you to purchase as well. All right. Thanks for tuning in. And inshallah, we'll see you on the next episode. All right. Assalamu alaikum.